Sporting Kansas City is in full rebuild, not just on the field, but throughout the club. And preseason has already thrown up some questions, some serious questions surrounding Sporting and the upcoming campaign. We are just a little bit over a month away from the season starting, and Sporting Kansas City has reported for preseason. They've gone down to Palm Beach for preseason after initially meeting up in Kansas City. With that, as a Sporting Kansas City fan, I think it's fair to say that this upcoming campaign is going to be very, very difficult for Sporting Kansas City. And the last two seasons for Sporting Kansas City were absolutely brutal. And if MLS had relegation, then we might see Sporting Kansas City down playing in the USL Championship due to how poor they were over the last couple of seasons. They finished with the fourth worst points totals in the league the last two seasons. And had it not been for worse goal differential for Montreal and for Atlanta, then we would see Sporting Kansas City finishing even further down the MLS standings. So what we have going forward? Well, we have a full rebuild going forward for Sporting Kansas City. And like I say, this rebuild isn't just about the squad. This is about the club top to bottom. Long-serving head coach and technical director Peter Vermes was finally dismissed in 2025, just a few games into the season. Now, this change with Sporting Kansas City, it's not just players, it's not just coaches, it's not just a GM, but it's a philosophical change, a shift in mentality with Sporting Kansas City. The scale of Sporting Kansas City's rebuild into some context. Sporting Kansas City hasn't won the MLS Cup since the 2013 season. They beat Real Salt Lake on penalty kicks. They had only won the MLS Cup once before that, and that was in 2000, defeating the Chicago Fire 1-0 at RFK Stadium. Now, Sporting Kansas City, with their two titles, last one coming 13 years ago. MLS is a very different league than it was then. Now to then. There are more teams, there are better players, there's more money, and overall there's a higher standard of football being played in MLS, and there's a lot more players overseas who are wanting to come to MLS to play, which makes it very exciting. With that, though, we go back to 2013 and we think about what the league was like then. Such a different league. Only 19 teams were in Major League Soccer during the 2013 season. Now we have 30. Just the overall change that we've seen with Major League Soccer is has massively affected Sporting Kansas City. And if you look at Peter Vermes as a coach, very, very successful, especially early on with Sporting Kansas City. That 2013, he's won some MLS Cups. But as MLS changed and evolved, we didn't really see necessarily that with Vermes and with the club. And now we see what Sporting Kansas City is having to do is to catch up with the rest of Major League Soccer and those teams that have come about who are having a lot more success at the moment than Sporting. Now, honestly, going into this preseason, I don't expect 2026 to look dramatically different from the last two campaigns just because of the amount of work that has to be done to make Sporting far, far more competitive than it was last season. Just a week ago, Sporting hired and announced the signing of head coach Raphael Wicki. He's previously coached FC Basel and Young Boys in Switzerland and the Chicago Fire in Major League Soccer. This move had been rumored for quite some time, and he was one of the leading candidates for the job. It was supposed to be announced back around Christmas time, but the club just wasn't able to get that done, and the deal was finally announced just a week ago, which really is a bit worrying if you're a fan, because with hiring a coach so late in the window, we've got a lot of players who don't want to sign for a team, don't want to join a team until they know who is the head coach, so they know what to expect once they get there. So Kansas City putting themselves even more on the back foot by announcing their head coach a little bit later than what they should have really done. A worrying thing with Wicki, I don't think this is a bad hire. I don't think this is a coach who doesn't know what he's doing, but I've not really heard anything from Wicki to tell me about how he wants to play, what kind of formation he wants to use, what kind of tactics he's thinking about, which could a lot of it be down to the lack of players that he has. He doesn't know who he has at his disposal, and we'll talk about some of those players in just a few minutes. But this is a coach who's going into a team with very few pieces, in place already. So really, he might not know how he wants to play just yet. I think the worrying thing for Wiki is the fact that he's not been in a coaching job for more than 2 seasons. He's always been sacked within 2 seasons, whether it be Basel, Young Boys, or Chicago Fire. Even with Basel and Young Boys, he was doing very well. Chicago Fire, not necessarily so much, although quite a few, the MLS media seem to think that he was taking Chicago in the right direction. We all know how poor Chicago has been for the last 15, 20 seasons. So hopefully, with him in place in Kansas City, this will be something that works out a little bit better for him and for the club. There's still a lot of reasons to be concerned. Okay, head coach is in place, GM is in place, but the club still has plenty of vacancies across the backroom staff. The medical team, even Sporting Kansas City 2, is reportedly short on staff. So this rebuild is happening everywhere within the club. And it begs the question you have to ask the ownership, really, how did it get to this? Because I know from interviews with former players and coaches that from time to time, Kansas City has been mentioned as the ideal club in Major League Soccer with its facilities, with the way that it was run. But it seems like over the last 5 to 10 years, the club has really declined in the way it's been, in the way it's run itself. Part of that, I guess, you could put down to Peter Vermes having too much power at the club and maybe ownership not really staying focused on things. It's not just the staffing issues that are an issue, there are playing issues. And at the end of last season, Sporting let go quite a number of players who had been there for a little bit of time, such as Eric Tommy. And so preseason began last weekend with 31 players reporting for preseason. Only 17 of those, however, were under Sporting Kansas City contracts. Now, this preseason group includes, along with those 17 signed players, there are unsigned there are unsigned super draft picks. You remember when MLS made a big deal about the super draft, which I think a lot of fans now and a lot of the media members, they don't even realize whenever the super draft is happening. But we've got a couple of super draft players coming into the preseason. There are several Sporting Kansas City 2 players coming in for preseason, and there are 8 academy players coming in. I know academy players really excite a lot of football fans, but I always am cautious about academy players because if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. Just because they come through the academy doesn't mean that they should be out there playing. And one of the things that was noticeable about the academy players that Sporting are bringing in for preseason are that 2 of which are 15 years or younger. Now, 3 players that are coming in for the preseason are trialists. Former Houston Dynamo defender Ethan Bartlow, former Nashville defender Wyatt Mayer, and former St. Louis defender Jaden Reed. So Sporting Kansas City, who need players, especially defenders, have brought in 3 trialists who were released at the end of last season from their respective teams. And that may be, again, another worrying sign for fans for the upcoming season. Of the 3 players that are being brought in for trials, Bartlow has the most MLS experience. He had 80 appearances with Houston Dynamo. Meanwhile, Reed made 19 appearances for St. Louis across 2014 and 2020. Across 2024 and 2025, while Mayer played 6 times for Nashville last season before he was released at the end of the campaign. Now, none of the 3 players screams automatic starter, but Sporting is taking a look, and I wouldn't be shocked to see one of these players, possibly Bartlow, in the starting 11 on opening day, just because of the way things are with Sporting Kansas City right now. They're desperately needing of defenders, and one of these players, if not all 3, could get signed, whether it be for the first team or for Kansas City 2, Sporting Kansas City 2. With that said, doesn't mean necessarily that any of the 3 players will finish the season with them. They could get traded in the end or loaned out to another club or released if another player comes along throughout the season. Offensively, Sporting were decent, if not good, last season. They scored 46 goals, led by Dejan Jovelic, with 18 of those goals, which made him one of the top scorers in the league. The fact that Sporting Kansas City has one of the best strikers in the league and were able to sign him from LA Galaxy last season is incredible because you don't see players who are putting up those kinds of goal numbers playing for the teams at the bottom of the league, typically. So Sporting really needs to build around Joveljic before he decides to up and leave, or another club comes in for him to take him somewhere else where he's going to be challenging for trophies. Now, defensively, that is the big issue with Kansas City. Yes, there are no defenders there right now, but last season, when there were defenders signed to the club, they were a disaster. Sporting conceded 70 goals, which was the most goals in Major League Soccer last term. And this year, if they continue to ship goals like that, then we're going to see another season where they're finishing at the bottom of the Western Conference. Now, the idea of 3 trialists coming in, those 3 trialists alone, if signed, won't fix this defense. That is unrealistic to think that the 3 of them or any one of them could fix this poor defense. So it's going to take a lot more surgery to fix this Sporting back line. I just wondered if some of the rumors about the signings that Sporting could make also included some of the Sporting Kansas City 2 players that could sign, maybe some of the academy players that could sign, or maybe some of the trialists that could sign. There was a link recently this week that Sporting Kansas City was looking at Brazilian center back Diego Borges. According to Transfermarkt, he's played 5 matches for Hungarian club Zalaegerszeg, excuse my pronunciation, and could cost around $3 million for Sporting. But the problem is that there are other clubs in for the Brazilian. Now, the reality is there is a lot to do for Sporting Kansas City, and there isn't a lot of time to do it in. The club has to sign players, they've got to integrate them, and they've got to find some cohesion. This is going to be difficult. The first part of the season could be the roughest part. Perhaps the summer gets a little easier, maybe more players come in when contracts in Europe expire, and players are more readily available, especially with the World Cup. After the World Cup, maybe players coming in. Now, last season, it took just 41 points to make the playoffs in the West. That's about 1.2 points a game. Sporting Kansas City averaged 0.82 points per game, finishing near the bottom or at the bottom of the Western Conference. The team, again, the defense was poor. Conceded 2.1 goals per game, but attacking-wise, really good. Scored 1.35 goals per game. So again, the defense has to be the part that Kansas City really focuses on and improves going forward for this season, or it's going to be another long season. As we come to the end of this video, Sporting Kansas City will be in action on Saturday for their first preseason game as they play Florida International in Palm Beach, and is the first of 6 preseason games. Saturday's match will give some insight into how Kansas City are going to play and how things are going to be, but for the most part, I wouldn't read much into this. They're playing a team, Florida International University. This is going to be more of a chance for the players to get the rust off and just get a little bit of familiarity as they go forward. And then the other 5 preseason games will be against Major League Soccer teams, which I would read a little bit more into that because 2 of those teams, they will be playing in the regular season. So that is something to watch out for this weekend if you are a Sporting Kansas City fan. Now, if you are a Sporting Kansas City fan or a fan of Major League Soccer in general, you want some honest coverage of the team and of the league throughout the season, then please follow me on drewfarmer.substack.com, DrewFC, where you can get my opinion, some news, and some analysis on the different aspects of Sporting Kansas City and Major League Soccer going forward, as well as Premier League and other football around the world. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and comment below. I'd love to hear your comments below or read your comments below, especially if you see this rebuild differently than I do. I'd love to talk about it, discuss it, and enjoy that. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.